Imagine an entire decade where everything just fell apart. The Great Depression wasn't just a bad time for the economy. It was the worst economic crisis in modern history. It completely changed how governments, businesses, and ordinary people thought about money, work, and even the future itself. What started as a financial crash in the United States quickly spread across the globe, leaving millions without jobs, hungry, and terrified. So, how did this happen? Let's dive into the causes, the unimaginable hardships, and the long, difficult road to recovery. Let's rewind to the 1920s, often called the Roaring Twenties. America was booming. Factories were churning out goods. New technologies like cars and radios were transforming daily life, and a feeling of endless prosperity was in the air. The stock market was the place to be, and everyone wanted in. People from all walks of life started investing. Many with little to no financial knowledge. A risky practice called buying stocks on margin became popular. This meant people were borrowing money to buy shares, betting that prices would just keep going up. This created a massive, fragile bubble built on speculation, not on the real value of the companies. But beneath this shiny surface, the economy was deeply unbalanced. While big businesses and the wealthy were getting richer, many workers' wages stayed low. To keep up appearances, families relied on credit, digging themselves deeper into debt. Out in the countryside, farmers were already struggling. Crop prices had been falling for years, and debt was piling up. Rural America was on shaky ground long before the big crash. Even the banks were playing a dangerous game, lending money carelessly and gambling with their depositors' savings on the stock market without proper safeguards. Then came the day it all shattered. October 29, 1929, Black Tuesday. Panic erupted on the stock market. Prices plummeted as millions of shares were sold in a frenzy. Fortunes vanished overnight. Public confidence in the entire financial system evaporated. Now, the crash itself didn't single-handedly cause the Great Depression, but it was the trigger that exposed all the underlying weaknesses in the economy and sent it into a freefall. As stock values disappeared, businesses started to fail. This led to a devastating chain reaction. Banks began to close one after another. Back then, there was no federal insurance, so when a bank failed, people lost everything, their entire life savings, gone. With no money and no savings, people stopped spending. Credit dried up completely. Businesses couldn't get loans to operate, so they had no choice but to lay off workers. The scale of job loss was staggering. By the early 1930s, nearly 1 in every 4 American workers was unemployed. For those lucky enough to still have a job, their wages were often slashed dramatically. The president at the time, Herbert Hoover, believed in a hands-off approach. He thought the economy would eventually fix itself and encouraged businesses to keep paying their workers while urging private charities to help the needy. But as the crisis deepened, it became clear these measures were nowhere near enough. Hoover's reluctance to provide direct federal aid led many to blame him for their suffering. And the term Hoovervilles was coined for the shantytowns that sprang up across the country. Life during the Great Depression was brutal. Families lost their homes and were forced into these Hoovervilles, makeshift settlements built from scraps. Breadlines and soup kitchens became a grim, common sight in every city. Many children had to drop out of school to find any work they could to help their families survive. Malnutrition and illness were rampant. In rural areas, things were just as bad, if not worse. Farmers faced foreclosure, losing the land that had been in their families for generations. On top of that, a severe drought hit the Great Plains, leading to the devastating Dust Bowl, where massive dust storms buried farms and homes. The psychological toll was just as damaging as the economic one. A sense of shame and hopelessness washed over the nation. People who had worked hard their whole lives suddenly couldn't provide for their families. Suicide rates climbed. Faith in core institutions like banks and the government crumbled. The American dream, the idea that hard work guarantees success, was profoundly shaken. By 1932, The American people had had enough. They voted for change, electing Franklin D. Roosevelt as president. FDR promised a new deal for the American people, signaling a dramatic shift. He believed the federal government had a duty to step in directly to stabilize the economy and provide relief. Soon after taking office in 1933, Roosevelt launched a wave of programs designed for relief, recovery, and reform. He declared a national bank holiday, temporarily closing all banks to stop the panic and restore confidence. New regulations were put in place, and the FDIC was created to ensure bank deposits, assuring people their savings were safe. Massive job programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps and the Works Progress Administration put millions of Americans back to work. They built roads, bridges, schools, and parks, improving the nation's infrastructure while earning a wage to support their families. Farmers received aid to stabilize crop prices, and the New Deal introduced reforms that we still live with today. Social Security was established, providing a safety net for the elderly, unemployed, and disabled. New laws strengthened workers' rights and unions, and Wall Street was reshaped with regulations to prevent a future crash. Now, the New Deal wasn't a magic bullet. Recovery was slow, and unemployment remained high for much of the 1930s. Critics from both sides argued it was either too much government spending or not nearly enough. But one thing is undeniable: Roosevelt's leadership restored hope and public confidence during one of the nation's darkest hours. The final push that ended the Great Depression came from an unexpected source. World War II. The massive government spending required for the war effort created millions of jobs and supercharged American industry. Factories that had been silent for years were now running 24/7, producing planes, tanks, and supplies. By the early 1940s, unemployment had fallen dramatically, and the Great Depression was finally over. The legacy of this period is immense. It reshaped the American economy and permanently expanded the role of the federal government. The banking regulations, social safety nets, and economic oversight we have today were all born from the painful lessons of the Depression. It taught us about risk, responsibility, and the power of coming together as a nation in times of crisis. The Great Depression remains a powerful reminder of how fragile our systems can be, and how leadership and policy are critical for navigating through hardship. It's a defining chapter of history that continues to shape the world we live in today. If you found this look into the Great Depression interesting, please give this video a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the history that made us who we are. Thanks for watching.